this panel. They had me next door moderating one on litigation and finance as well, so I apologise. Right, STOs, the next multi-billion-dollar market. We have had some reference to STOs in the morning panels, but this is really going to do a deep dive. I would like to introduce, we have Patrick Lowry on my left. He's the CEO and Managing Partner of Iconiq Holding. We have Saeed Aldarmaki, who's the Managing Director at Alphabit. And we have Yagub Rahimov, who's the CEO and co-founder of Seven Markets Group. So before we go into more of a deep dive on STOs, if you'd just like to explain the perspective that each of you are bringing to the panel for the benefit of our audience.
I'll start. I'm mainly advising several blockchain companies. One of the companies that I'm advising here is a startup which is going to be a regulated crypto exchange in the ABGM. So I've been in touch with the regulator here quite a lot, and we've been talking about getting security tokens listed on the exchange once we've launched. So we're looking at what the requirements are, what the compliance requirements are. So I'm very much in touch with the regulatory aspect of getting securities tokenized. So that's my main focus. And as a fund as well, we're looking at the different companies that would issue security tokens that we can invest in as well.
So on our end, at Seven Markets, we are a media holding, and also we have a smaller angel investment fund where we manage ourselves. Personally, I became an accidental Bitcoin investor back in 2009, really accidental. And in 2017, in the Q1, we had a few friends asking us to assist them on ICO. We have always operated in the marketing side. Suddenly we became the most on-demand ICO maker of the world. We did 60 plus ICOs in 18 months span. It was a boom, literally. And we started to notice that our parties, I'm referring to institutional parties that we were talking, they started to ask, what kind of equity am I getting? They were not much happy with the utility token element. So that's where we started to really look into the STO part. Personally speaking, being a libertarian, I'm not much fond of the STOs. And Patrick here, we have had a few discussions with him as well. But nonetheless, it doesn't mean that because of my personal beliefs, we should ignore a whole bunch of institutional investors out there, or say, this is it, and we don't care about the rest. And at the moment, we have invested in a few exchanges, including one security exchange that's coming up very soon, that will fix one of the key elements of the secondary market, where we can anyway discuss it in the next following minutes.
I think it was very nice of you to say you guys had discussions rather than debates.
Yes, many discussions. So my name is Pat. I'm the CEO of Iconiq Holding, as Rachel had mentioned. We are a crypto asset management firm based in Frankfurt, Germany, with offices in London and New York. We actually began as a venture capital group, investing into early stage blockchain and crypto companies. We assist them with their ICOs, now STOs, and help them scale a bit further through our accelerator program. On the flip side, we also have Iconiq Funds. It's a series of crypto asset index funds, fully regulated, issued only for accredited institutional investors. And we're very bullish on the STO space. Similar to what Yagub has said, I'm not necessarily fully convinced by the use case of it. We'll probably dive into that a little bit later, but very happy to be here.
Excellent, and yes, we'll dive into some of the use cases as well as picking up on some of the points that Saeed spoke about with regards to the regulation and some of the aspects around that. But maybe just taking a step back, and for my benefit as well, please tell me, how would you describe an STO?
Well, I can jump in if you don't mind. For me, STO is like pretty much, or should be, like an IPO just tokenized. So there are specific rules of security laws applying for STOs. That's the word S standing for security token offering, where you are supposed to follow. Not just do an ICO and call I to the S, just a hand type of mistake, and do the same thing. It's not the same thing. There are rules that are applying where you need to follow it, and there is no gambling around. If you gamble around, you may get along with it for a year or so, but sooner or later, some of the regulator, probably your regulator, will be catching up, giving fines, or perhaps even shutting the whole business, or even freezing the assets and so on. So you gotta treat it as an IPO and follow the rules.
So how does it differ in that sense then from an ICO? Because I know ICOs have obviously struggled quite a bit from a regulatory perspective and reputational perspective recently. What are the differences, especially on?
So in many ways, there actually isn't much of a difference. A lot of ICOs are illegitimately selling what is effectively a security instrument, and a lot of STOs are illegitimately selling what a utility token effectively is, except they're using it under a guise of a security offering, specifically because they know investors are potentially dumb enough to confuse it for a financial instrument, a debt instrument, or an equity instrument, and there's a marketing benefit of this. The other side of this is that they're just frankly trying to cover their asses from the regulator, most particularly the SEC. So in many ways, there isn't too much of a difference. I'm very convinced of STOs long-term, however skeptical of them right now based on the quality of STOs that we're frankly seeing. If you look at how financing has evolved in the crypto space, of course it began as ICOs for crypto protocols, which still have a use case today. These are the Ethereums, it's the Dashes, it's the other more blockchain protocols themselves. Then it became these utility tokens, which are effectively nothing more than liquidity that can be used to purchase services or purchase goods within a platform that frankly doesn't yet exist. The next evolution is then people started selling security tokens, which actually had the same functionality as the utility instruments. Really not much of an evolution by any means. They were only offered to accredited individuals. And now what we're starting to see is the STOs being used as bonds, because a bond is effectively the next favorable financing instrument relative to a utility token. I'm more convinced that we're going to start to see more equity-driven instruments generating liquidity on the cap tables of early-stage companies. And in Germany, we're actually starting to see this, where we are tokenizing legal entities of early-stage companies to create that liquidity for these ventures. I do not believe in these debt instruments right now for these early-stage companies through STOs because the risk-to-reward profile just does not pay off.
I think for me, the security token offering is basically an offering of anything that can be regarded as a security and having it in a token format. So it could be equity, it could be an asset, it could be real estate, it could be a bond. So anything that has security-like features and is offered as a token instead of on paper, that's literally what an STO is. And I think the potential for the use of blockchain technology in security token offerings is there's a lot of benefits there, and especially one of them being liquidity of these tokens being traded on secondary exchanges rather than having to wait for an IPO, for example. So I think the most immediate form of security tokens that I can see and the most popular is real estate assets being tokenized.
I want to come back to that point about financial inclusion and also the secondary market as well, because I think that's an important one. But where are all of you seeing the demand for this, and why is there even a need for an STO market?
Well, that's actually the biggest challenge right now in the STO market. But maybe I can just quickly give a bit of education in here for some of the parties that are not really informed about the cryptocurrencies, as everyone is referring to, or blockchain history. So we have had Bitcoin being the very, very first blockchain technology. It's the cryptocurrency 1.0, blockchain 1.0, simple, basically transactional tool. The second thing we moved into the smart contracts, that's the Ethereum as an example, enabling basically auction-based activities to be done by each token or asset or blockchain. Now, the third one that's supposed to come is the cross-communication, but basically blockchain 3.0, which doesn't still quite exist yet. Now, if we are talking of the security tokens we are talking of, it doesn't have to be a superficial technology out there. As long as it's a basic blockchain technology who shows the ownership of the asset. And by the way, security token offering also known as the asset-backed token offering. So there is an underlying asset inside, and in the previous other STO discussion I saw, the parties were talking about insurance, basically underwrapping it with an insurance, giving that asset a valuation, which needs to be a differentiated factor compared to the ICOs. In ICOs, the owner comes, my token is worth $1, that's $1 valuation, that nobody needs to question it. That's basically, you like it, you pay it, you don't like it, you don't pay it. In the ICO world, there needs to be a STO world, there needs to be an asset to be valued, there needs to be an underwriter, and there needs to be preferably an insurer in the process that basically does the assurance element in that discussion. So we currently do not have much of these things quite taking place. If someone says it, probably they're lying. That's the unfortunate reality. If someone calls themselves an expert, there is no expert in this industry yet. There are people of some kind of experiences that I keep on talking. And the most important part is that there is no secondary market as we speak right now, like Rachel mentioned it. What it means is that if you buy an STO, essentially speaking from a legal perspective, you are not supposed to be selling it. And you definitely are not allowed to take it to your private, let's say, MyEther wallet or something like that. It's not essentially allowed. Because then you can send it to George, James, whomever, and there won't be any kind of security law applying to it. You can essentially speaking transfer real estate ownership from one party to another one, not following any kind of AML rules and so on. That is a big challenge right now in the STO world, but I'm also glad to say that there are two parties that I personally at least am aware of, and I'm an investor in one of it, that are working on this to fix that secondary market issue. So.
I guess you also, you need the primary market to be robust before you have the secondary market. So I just also want to look, the title of this is the next multi-billion-dollar market. Maybe look a bit at what's maybe holding us back from that at the moment and what needs to happen.
So it's not the next multi-billion-dollar market. It will be $1 trillion market. In fact, we at Iconiq are in the position that every single asset in the world, every financial instrument, every real-world tangible asset can effectively be tokenized. And we're not the only ones that believe this. I think it was recently Robert Gressel. He was the CEO and chairman of the NASDAQ. He said that every equity on Wall Street, everything that's traded on the New York Stock Exchange will be tokenized. And it's absolutely inevitable that this will happen. The new Googles and Amazons in the world will have a security token effectively as the form of their IPO that allows for people to participate in the growth of that option. What's holding us back from this right now is, frankly, infrastructure. This doesn't just include regulation, which is, of course, a big issue, but frankly, the technology isn't there right now. The blockchain itself, the distributed ledgers, isn't fully scalable in its current iteration. There are storage solutions that do not work. Cold storage, hot wallets. Cold storage has its downfalls because basically you aren't able to access or trade your tokens at any given time. Hot wallets can theoretically be hacked. There are no real valuation tools for a lot of these assets in the space right now. So a lot of that infrastructure that we're used to in traditional finance does not exist. I was actually just sitting on the round table where one of our cohorts made a very, very valid point that the people that are in charge of bringing the adoption of this asset class to date right now, they have no real incentive to do so, because if they mess up, their firms will be firing them because there isn't this infrastructure. However, what we're seeing is companies like Bakkt, that are backed by the ICE, they are bringing true institutional grade infrastructure to this space to allow for us to scale.
I think the blockchain community is very excited about the security token offerings because it's a clear use case for blockchain technology in the financial services or the financial markets. I think it's also, they're excited because it's a way for institutions to come into this market not having to worry about, for example, with ICOs, there wasn't anything protecting the investors. So they feel like if there is regulation with the right jurisdictions for all these STOs, then at least the regulatory risk is low for them. So they'll be more enticed into investing into STOs. But yeah, I mean, the technology is there, like Patrick was saying, it might not be ready for it quite yet, but I believe in the next year or two, especially the technology is being developed, and specifically for security tokens, I believe that it's going to grow in the next couple of years.
Absolutely.
I absolutely believe that the technology is there. There are just lack of experts. The technology is there. I mean, you cannot expect to utilize blockchain technology as a database storage. The blockchain is not a database storage to host and manage big data, but you have to use encrypted storages with blockchain technology to be able to scale down. And encrypted storage is not something new. It wasn't invented yesterday. It has been much before the blockchain technology. It's just people are trying to do the impossible. I know that impossible even is possible. However, there is one thing that someone is giving you the wheel and you are still dragging the horse. It's a different story, right? You have to use the right mindset. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Go with the flow. Use some of the technology that already exists, and they are all operational. Now, one additional point that I want to comment here as well is that tokenized it's the word here. If we are talking of the Nasdaq had a failure a couple of years back. I think it was a year or two ago. Nasdaq failed completely because of some database mismanagement, and some people suddenly had a couple of $1 million in stocks in their account which they didn't own. Now, if you tokenize the stock market, which is going to be, not will be, it's going to be, it must happen. This thing can never happen because blockchain is basically eliminating that. Throw it to the trash. That's the biggest added value, transparency and basically security element in there. I'm talking of the cyber security element in there, not the financial security. If we add these two in there, basically the whole AML requirements that all the banks and central banks and regulators are really fighting for, blockchain is actually becoming the solution for it and eliminating all the issue. Now, here is a very important point. In regulatory market, if you have an IPO and the founders are dumping their stocks, there is not really much of a way that you can actually track that someone is dumping it. In blockchain, everything is transparent. You can already identify if someone is dumping it. There are now whale alerts and so on in traditional even utility tokens world. Someone is dumping, immediately everyone knows, and they dump it before the founder himself because they saw. I mean, that's how it works. You cannot basically fool the people. That's the beauty added element.
Assuming that dump doesn't take place on a centralized exchange. If it's a central wallet that's supporting the exchange, for instance, the Binance, you can't see this.
But there is even added element.
Theoretical decentralized exchange.
You see the wallet of let's say the ICO who held it, and you suddenly see that 2 million tokens have been transferred to Binance.
Yep.
Nobody transfers tokens to Binance for fun. They are transferring it to make a transaction. So there you go. Before the funds arrive in the real alerted, and you are selling it before the founder himself. That's the issue right now. Not issue. That's a beautiful element of the blockchain technology. And anyone talking of the transparency must really utilize this added value, whether it's with the security or utility or whatsoever. There is this added value.
And to piggyback off of what you were saying, I actually got into blockchain working in an exchange. I was with Deutsche Börse, Germany's largest stock exchange, working on their venture capital team. Back in about 2016 or so, we were looking at some early stage blockchain companies because obviously we identified the use case for DLT as a stock exchange operator. And I can't even tell you how every single day our chief security officer would be running down to our office. We got more pitches for blockchain security companies from him than we actually did from blockchain companies themselves. Specifically because nobody truly understands that by having this decentralized ledger, this distributed ledger of transactions for those exchanges, eliminates a massive risk. Because if any of those exchanges are truly hacked and we do compromise the integrity of that financial data, that is billions of dollars lost overnight. And of course there's backup systems that will maintain that ledger in some regard, but the loss of trust that we have in the entire financial ecosystem tanks immediately, which is exactly what led us to the crisis back in 2008 and 2009. And what blockchain effectively does, it eliminates that cost of trust within our financial markets, and that's where the adoption inevitably, I believe, takes place on an infrastructural level.
And who is really leading the way in that charge then from, I guess, the infrastructure side and the regulation side?
I think here in the UAE, the ADGM is very proactive with looking at cryptocurrencies, blockchain technology, and I think they've based it around several jurisdictions, and they've picked the best solution out of all of them and mixed them together, and that's what they're doing here. And I believe that the Emirates Security and Commodities Authority will be issuing regulation for onshore, security tokens and ICOs as well. So I believe it's a chance also for all the different jurisdictions globally to communicate with each other, because once security tokens start trading globally, then there will be issues that are interrelated, and they need to be on the same wavelength to understand how the regulation works in each jurisdiction. So to make sure that the securities laws in all these jurisdictions aren't violated by people transferring or trading between other parties globally. So it just opens up the borders, and you'll see a lot of trade happening all over the world between people in South America, here in Europe, and America, Asia. So that's something that I see happening in the future.
My challenge here, by the way, with UAE and a few other countries as well, is that they all try to put strict regulation on something that quite often they don't understand. UAE is actually, they have tried to open up quite a lot, which is amazing. I love the vision of the country. Each time I come here, I get even more amazed. Except the fake investors that I see a lot in here. Whenever you talk, they're investors, but I haven't seen a single penny coming out of most of them. That's the unfortunate reality about Dubai specifically. Now, if you're talking of the leadership, actually, it's not like previously we saw Malta rising on the top. We saw, I don't know, Singapore being on top and so on, or UK kind of trying to lead the way and so on, or even South Korea and Japan. But right now, I believe actually they are not the leaders. The leaders are changing, and it's rapidly changing. I personally moved into Germany 10 days ago, because Germany, like a year ago, they were completely against everything, and they're booming. We spoke to some of the parties, they're like hugging you the second you talk about innovation, the second you talk about added values that you are bringing and how you can help them. Switzerland is another one. They're doing perfect, amazing job. And on top of it, there are some smaller countries, underdogs, I want to call them. Mauritius tried their best. I saw a party from Mauritius in here as well. Then we have Malaysia. Nobody really could think. And there is a country called Georgia in Caucasus. They are trying their best and opening up. So there are countries that you wouldn't really call them leaders. They're catching up and they're on fire. And whomever stays behind, they are the one snoozing and losing.
I'm not sure who we really want to call who the leader in the space is, because a lot of these jurisdictions are working their hardest, but I think we can all definitively agree the loser in this race right now is in fact the United States. The US is behind the curve at every single turn when it comes to crypto, and that's because they're being handicapped by ancient laws back in the 1920s that are tying the SEC's hands. And it's absolutely ridiculous that they've now taken this point. You can probably tell I'm American, and there's a reason I live in Germany now. But he's absolutely right that the European markets in particular are seeing massive innovations. And forget Malta, forget Gibraltar, because I do not necessarily believe that larger institutions that have billions of AUM are going to necessarily trust the legal frameworks behind countries that are notorious for their money laundering over the last couple of decades. But when you start to see real players like Germany, that they put together a framework for STOs. We actually have our very first public-facing STO currently ongoing in Germany right now, has a full prospectus offering and everything, raising $8 million. It's a bond, unfortunately, and we passed on investing into it, but it shows what they're doing. Jointly, back in May of last year, my company actually received the very first no-action letter from the German regulator, the BaFin, which the SEC finally just did yesterday, or I'm sorry, not yesterday, but last week for an ICO. This is how far behind the United States has become, and there's a lot of jurisdictions in the world that are trying to capitalize on this, because no longer do people have to rely on what the SEC says to kind of create their own regulatory frameworks for how they monitor this. And And that's going to be a unique dynamic shift in global economics as we start to see the tokenization of real assets become the future.
Now, I have a couple of other questions, but one of the feedbacks that I had before lunch was that there wasn't enough time for audience Q&A. So if there are any questions from the audience, yes. 3 I think.
While you're getting actually the question, I just want to also comment something. Most of the time, what you need to avoid if you are considering STO, ICO, whatever it is in that alternative fundraising methodology, if someone is reaching out to you that I can help you fundraise, I can help you blah blah, stay the hell out of those parties.
Yes.
Stay the hell out of it and you will not regret it. They are, and there is another point. If someone is publicly putting, I'm reaching out to you, we are experts in blah blah, there is no expert. And no sane party, in especially STO world, will go and call themselves experts. Whether it's fundraising channel or it's marketing, it's setup or whatever, there is no expertise in there. There is like some kind of use cases, but that's all about it, at least for the time being.
That only work with licensed broker-dealers, genuine placement agents, those obviously you can trust, and only work with investors that are advisors if they actually put money into your company. If they're not willing to put skin in the game, they're worthless as an advisor.
Hi, I'm Subbu, CFO of CGCX. My question is that, as I understand, the basis of a blockchain is decentralization. By moving towards STOs and putting everything back into those institutions, regulatory organizations, are we not actually superimposing them, the whole thing back into the centralized format by going towards STO?
Whoever said blockchain was entirely about decentralization to begin with. It doesn't have to be. Blockchain can be used as a tool that can be distributed. Just because it's a distributed ledger, which creates something more secure, that is also auditable, more transparent, doesn't mean it has to be decentralized in its consensus mechanism. There's a difference that people just kind of fundamentally don't understand between how data is stored and how we process that ledger of transactions. So it is possible to have those centralized transaction systems that occur on distributed ledgers, and we get the benefit of the blockchain from the distribution of the ledger, which enhances that security. But to more frankly answer your question, yes, in certain ways we are bastardizing the initial core of the blockchain of what Satoshi's vision was. However, there are arguments that full decentralization does not work. There's a reason that democracy in its purest form and pure consensus mechanisms inevitably fail. That's why we have constitutional republics. That's why we have monarch republics and all sorts.
To add that, by the way, there is two parts of parties in the cryptocurrency world or blockchain world. One is the one that's pushing for decentralization. These are generally libertarians, believing that Big Brother should not really have whole control of you, like the banks deciding who should have a bank account and who should be kicked out. And then there is a party saying that there needs to be some kind of limitation. I personally belong myself as a libertarian category, but if you talk about the Genesis white paper, I'm referring to the white paper of the Bitcoin, the Satoshi white paper. There, it's all about decentralization. It's because it was created as a protest to the financial system overall. Now, if we move to the STO, it's 100%. It's against the core values of the blockchain, initial blockchain we are talking of. I would disagree on Pat to some extent in that area. But at the same time, we cannot just say, just because we have our own vision on decentralization and our belief on some kind of theory. I'm basically fanatical on the libertarian values, but it also doesn't mean that I should ignore half of the world who are used to the traditional way. And at the same time, we don't live in utopia, unfortunately, where people are crazy. If you give the tools to a crazy person, they'll do crazy stuff. And therefore, unfortunately, there is some kind of AML and KYC required in these activities, but to what extent that needs to be properly identified, and basically some kind of consensus regulation for global decentralized markets should be created. Right now, that's the biggest and the most important requirement, because SEC is blowing a different whistle, Buffett is blowing a different one, if you come to MFSA, a different one, Dubai DFSA, different one, and everyone is, China is saying like, stay the hell out of us. Everyone is, whistling differently. But if we take bits and pieces, create a decentralized regulation, that's the key, I believe, needed added value. Then we solve the whole world crisis on the blockchain discussion one. And to do so, we actually need to, if I'm here, I need to get the Abu Dhabi regulation support. If I'm in Dubai, I need theirs, and German, etc. But it's not one person job. We need to get the people together. And the next point is that, unfortunately, in the crypto world, the biggest challenge is that there are a lot of kids. That's what I would like to call. And if someone is doing better, they like to say, hey, that person should not be doing better, blah, blah. They're fighting each other instead of uniting each other. And that's another 2 cents for you.
Yes, and I think, technology is always just an enabler or enhancer, isn't it? So if you're going to be a kid, you can probably be more of a kid. If you're going to be unethical, you can be more unethical. It's really just a portal.
There's a reason why atomic bombs are not with the crazy people, right? There is one exception out there.
If STOs are asset-based or asset-backed, would that make them Sharia compliant?
I think with regards to Sharia compliance, effectively, yes, but to call an instrument Sharia compliant, it has to be, has to tick all the boxes that are required from a Sharia compliant jurisdiction. So the scholars or the actual regulator has to specify that it is Sharia compliant. But it does fit the criteria that's required. It's just an element of, it's a question of will it actually officially be stated as Sharia compliant. So that's something that some people out there are looking at Sharia compliant securities. So if it's a security which is Sharia compliant in general, as it is now, then when it goes onto a token, it has the same rules, the same laws that apply to it. So it should effectively be Sharia compliant. So.
And to add on it, I'm part Jewish, part Muslim, and married to a Christian. So I am from a very weird background from that in essence. But based on, I'm not an Islamic scholar. However, if you are using smart contracts, which you are, while creating your tokenized environment, it's up to you as the founder to define the rules in there, how you want to make it. If you want to, even an ICO can be Sharia compliant if you put the right, basically, rules inside your smart contract. It's just a robotic tool in there. If you turn the tools basically upside down, you can turn a Sharia compliant asset just on which would be otherwise into a non-compliant one. So it much depends on the founder rather than the type of the tool that you are using. We can have a long discussion on it, but majority of them I would agree that currently they are not, because nobody wanted them to be.
Right, we do just have 1 minute left, and I'm conscious of going too much of the time, so I think we will wrap up the panel. But I do want to say, Yagub, you said that there were no experts, but I do feel as though I've at least shared the panel with 3 people with a lot of experience. So thank you very much for your insights and input, and thank you, audience, as well, for your questions.
Thank you very
Please
much.
join me.